cracking open a cold one to film a video. Ooh, it's got the TV going. Hello, true duelists. YGOstrats here, solely justifying a box purchase with this one, folks. Not even gonna try to lie to you. Welcome to Why Not Play, a series where I talk about why I play and why maybe you should try various decks. This week I'm talking about Fur Hire. Like I said, this is justifying the money spent on a box of Dark Saviors from 2018. Yes, I too bought into the hype of Sky Striker at the time, and despite even pulling the legendary Engage from my box, I still refused to pay for the other two copies and the Widow Anchors and to play that deck. Instead, what I found in my hands was not most of a Striker core like I had hoped, but almost the entirety of the Fur Hire archetype. The deck is known for two reasons, really. Furries being one of them, and then the disregard for all that is holy in regards to PSCT. PSCT, or Problem Solving Card Text, was introduced in 2011 as a means to make it easy to, quote, specify card effects to the point where most situations can be resolved logically interpreting the card text. Basically, read the card and it's apparent. Unfortunately for Konami, it required reading, which, as we all know as the joke states, Yu-Gi-Oh! Players just cannot do. And while this did result in the tragic loss of Mask of Restricts, no matter what the situation, neither player can offer any monster as a tribute, which is the best text on any card, by the way, it meant that things like Exiled Force or Blackwing Gale to Whirlwind clearly stated that they target. So, untargetable things are a lot more understandable now. Fur Hire does mostly comply with PSCT, however it blatantly breaks the initial wording. All Fur Hire monsters won't say a Fur Hire monster like a Nekroz monster would or a Tellarknight monster would. Instead, they say one monster Fur Hire. It is a simple play on words, a blatant use of the pun that is the archetype's name, and honestly doesn't make it any more or less confusing to understand what the cards do. But this is a English translation of anything from Japanese, and as the quote from my workplace actually states, they just included this in the perils of Japanese to English translation, which is a hilarious sentence in general. The Redditors saw this and got pissed. Livid. This ruins the sanctity of the original cards. The purity of the Japanese art of card design has been thrown to the wind with this. Really though, people molding over this is the funniest thing to behold. It does not make a single difference. There are far worse offenses than the Fur Hire card text, but I mean, everyone's looking for a reason to get mad on the internet these days. And if we couldn't have something to be mad at, what would be the point of Twitter? It is also worth noting, back on topic, that it is the first pirate archetype in the game, which is cool. We can take a look at that as opposed to the inevitable comments that will call you a furry for playing this deck, but we got 20 pirate cards in the archetype. Let's take a look at them. Each of the level 4 and lower monsters have an effect to summon another monster for hire from your hand once per turn. And they have another effect that activates when a monster for hire is then summoned to the field. Synergy in their own card text. Beautiful thing. The level 5 and hires, on the other hand, all have effects that depend on the number of differently named monsters for hire you control. And then with Philo, when a monster for hire is summoned, can summon another monster for hire from your grave in defense position, but it will go to the bottom of the deck when it leaves the field. Donpa and Recon will pop either a face-up card or a set card respectively. Helmer, who for legal reasons, as well as other ones totally not relating to a copy pasta in any way, is not a Vaporeon and can discard one card for hire to draw a card. Beat, who looks like a porcupine but according to Yugipedia is apparently a rabbit. Okay. Will add one monster for hire from deck to hand. Seal, spelled like the Pokemon and designed after Master Splinter from Ninja Turtles, will recover one monster for hire from the graveyard back to your hand. And lastly, Bravo is both the name of the card and what I'm saying, because it will give all monsters for hire currently on field 500 attack and defense until the end of the turn. Again, all those proc when you summon a monster for hire. For the higher level ones, they don't summon anymore, but proc when summoned. Segita, when summoned, burns the opponent for 500 times the number of differently named monsters for hire you control, excluding herself, and makes all monsters for hire untargetable, which is decent. Dinah, the level 6, banishes cards from the graveyard up to the number of differently named monsters for hire, including himself, and is the only monster for hire the opponent can attack while on the field. Wiz is level 7 and gains you 500 life points for each different name other than her own, and can discard one monster for hire to negate a spell or trap as a quick effect. The captain of the ship is Raphael? We'll never know. I'm not looking it up before that. I didn't look it up before, and I'm not looking it up after. Excavates cards from the top of the deck for each differently named monster for hire you control, and then adds any one of them to the hand. And you can discard one monster for hire to negate a monster effect as a quick effect as well. Their last monster is a Link 3, Folgo. He needs 3 different types of monsters to link summon, and when special summoned, can summon a monster for hire from your deck with a different type than what was used to summon him. It also has an insanely broken draw effect, which is to draw 3 cards the first time an opponent's card is destroyed by battle or card effect. The spell lineup is decent, with a field spell that lets you give up your draw phase to lose to an Ash Blossom, which lets you give up your draw phase to add a monster for hire from deck to hand. And if you control 5 or more differently named monsters for hire, can be sent to the graveyard to destroy your opponent's entire field, but doing so will make them take no damage for the rest of the turn. The initial effect to skip the draw is not good. The nuke is funny, but not worth it typically. Up to you. Mayhem for hire is a quick play spell monster reborn with a hard once per turn and only summons in defense, but it's not bad. And Rookie for hire tributes a monster for hire and then summons a monster for hire that's either 1 level higher or lower than what was tributed from your hand or deck. You can only activate 1 per turn, and if you use it, only monsters for hire are able to attack. Lastly is the best name card in the deck and the only trap to the archetype, Training for Hire, for all your training needs. I play one of this to piss off my friends anytime I duel with them by saying its full name every single time I activate the effect. I am a good friend, I promise. Copium. It's not terrible, per se, summoning any lower level monster for hire than one that's destroyed by battle once per turn, and essentially turns your entire archetype into a series of floaters, in a sense. Mostly played for the name. And that's everything that they've gotten to date. So why play them? There's a few reasons, I suppose. If you are a furry, you probably love it and are already playing it, so probably doesn't need to be said. But if you're a budget player, I don't know of a deck that could cost any less. In paper, the most expensive card for this archetype right now on TCG Player is $3.75, and the overwhelming majority of cards in the archetype are only $1 for every card in the archetype. In Master Duel, they only have 2 ultra rares and 3 super rares, but one of their super rares is Dinah, and he's like the worst one that most people don't play, so really you only have 2 ultras, 2 supers. Very affordable. The biggest reason I play them, as I've said, is to justify a box that I probably shouldn't have bought, but after I started playing it, I noticed 2 things. One is that it is absolutely not a competitive level deck in any sense of the word. It is a casual deck, the most casual a deck can be, which is fine. Just temper your expectations if you're playing it. And the reason I think it's so casual is the second thing that I ultimately noticed when playing it. It's really, really fair. It's too fair to ever be good on its own. Every single card and effect has a hard once per turn. Quite literally all of them. The summon from hands, the on summons, the negates, the spell and trap, everything once per turn. It is so unbelievably fair. The negates all need a discard, but the whole point of the deck is to swarm from your hand. So to nullify this, you have to go into Folgo, but you still need to destroy things on the opponent's field for it to resolve its effect, and there are plenty of ways to stop him. Ash, Imperm, Veiler, hell, even the act of summoning him and resolving his effect puts you in Nibiru range. Which means when you're playing, you need to manage your negates and your hand advantage very carefully. since you've only got so many cards in your hand and so many interruptions per turn. But if you are playing a slower sort of format, it's fine. If you and your buddies want to play with slower or weaker decks, Ghost Tricks or Red Eyes, Magnet Warriors, Gaia, the BLS archetype, really anything from Duel Monsters that Kaiba didn't play. Because if Kaiba didn't play it, and it's a deck you can't top with it in any sense of the word. I don't know how Yugi was the king of games. Man, he cheated in some way, because I've played Yugi's decks and I've played Kaiba's decks, and one is clearly better. Either way, it's a very, very simple deck to play. The effects are all solid, covering the majority of what you can want, with some pops and some negates and some recovery. And it's also a good deck to introduce someone to the game with, provided you play against it with a deck of an equal or similar power level. It clearly has a designed playstyle into it, and could be solid when mixed in with some staple traps to teach them about how all the different types of card works. And in that simple Yu-Gi-Oh, this deck not only shines, but it's fun. Links are easy to make, and the variety of levels mean that you could tech in some Xyz for niche scenarios. And a tuner can, just some teched in effect veilers can really open up a synchro toolbox for this deck. To some degree, the normal summon's very, very important. All in all, the slower duels offer room for a lot more back and forth when you're playing an equal level deck, and it can be fun to really toy around with and figure out some plays. The beautiful thing is that since all the monsters for hire have an effect when a monster for hire is summoned, their quick play revive can be used on the opponent's turn to get triggers for pops or searches or recovery or anything like that. So there is a little more thought that can be put into it to really shine with the deck and help teach someone who's new, the advantage of not just immediately clicking buttons and playing cards. This is the last deck list that I used, held together with Hope, Solemn Judgment, and Extravagance for hand advantage. If you want this deck can easily play, there can be only one, as there's only 2 monsters in this build right now that share a type, and the Hornet Drones into Kagari can make 2 monsters on field of different types, so then you only need to normal summon 1 for hire, and hey, look at that, it's Folgo, which is not bad by any stretch. And with Rhoda getting beat for more searching, you got 4 beats. What more could you want? There's really not a lot to say about this build. It's desperately trying to be better than it is. This is what I threw together for a more relaxed version of the deck that you might enjoy more. Again, really not a whole lot to say about it. It's traded out your Extravs and Super Polys and Judgments for some more old school traps and spell cards, Veilers for some variety in the extra deck a little bit, whichever interests you and fits your playstyle more. And that's about it. For new or casual players or budget players and furries, I think those 4 groups will really enjoy this deck. I mean, really, when it gets down to it, I think this is a deck for anybody. Thanks for watching. Leave a like and a comment if you enjoyed. I will not apologize for correctly using this archetype's PSCT in this video. It was actually much harder to do speaking than I thought it would be when writing out the script, and I did say everything worded as properly according to the cards, so you're welcome. As always, subscribe to YGO Strats so you too can become a true duelist.